Hello and welcome to another episode of Historic Hindsight. I'm John, that's Tom, and today we're talking about some old white dude that ran the country for a bit.
That's right, Johnny. Our fifth old white dude that ran the country.
More specifically.
And if you don't know who that is, apparently his name was James Monroe. And if you don't remember old Jimmy, neither did I.
I don't. I mean, I feel like this is one of those presidents that the only people who remember him are those, first graders who memorize all the presidents and their parents drag them around making, hey, name all the presidents in order. Tell everybody all the things you know about presidents. And it's just
you ask them,
trivia, but they don't.
And then you ask them
tell me a
did.
little bit about this Jimmy Monroe fellow. But,
Johnny. You know what? The title of this episode should just be Nepotism, because he essentially gets his role because of that, and then that's about it. It's nepotism. But we'll get the quick stuff.
Does he then pass it down? Does he?
No, he doesn't.
Also,
no, it's not an Adam situation where his kid gets it. No, he gets in because of nepotism.
Gotcha. Okay, so standard politics.
Standard politics.
Pretty much par for course.
We're gonna get the elephant in the room right out of the way. Dude owned some slaves and was a bit
shocking.
of a hypocrite. So. Okay.
If you had that on your bingo board,
well, yeah,
that's a free space at this point.
At this point, yeah, minus Adams there, yeah, it's a free space. He's going to own 250 slaves in his lifetime, in fact, and we're seeing a very much of a trend here, as almost every single president that we've had so far, minus Adams, has been one of the bigger slave owners in the nation. So,
I mean, so that's only 80. That's 80%. Of our
but it's gonna that number is going to keep growing there, Johnny.
Just keep going up for a little while.
I think we've got a few more
until
years
it becomes
of that.
illegal, of course. And then,
yeah, pretty much. Now, he does recognize that in order for this country to survive, slavery does have to kind of go away, because it is a very divisive subject, and you can't unite a country if half of it wants to own people and the other half doesn't. So,
well, we'll see about that, Tommy. I mean, I think they're going to go ahead and give it a go for another, 30 years or some shit like that.
But he is also not going to take any steps really to rectify that as
no. He just recognizes that
personal life.
I just recognize that this issue might need to be addressed, and we can't really be a slave owning nation going forward after I'm gone and forgotten about.
Yep. In 1810,
that's all it meant.
During the Virginia census of 1810, it shows that he is actually one of the nation's largest slave owners. Not only does he own it, he is
he owns most of them.
He owns most of them. He's pretty much he's up there with how many that he owns. Now, to give credit where credit is due. I do, like I said, I have to try to,
Okay, all right, let's go ahead and give this slave owner credit.
He does, while in politics, oppose any constitutional amendment codifying slavery into law. So he does not allow, anytime there's a suggestion that, hey, we need to put slavery in the Constitution, he goes, no, we're not going to do that.
And then he says, instead, I think maybe we should put it in that all men are free and slavery is going to be abolished, and maybe we move away from that as an institution.
No, he doesn't do that either. He just
just says, nah, I don't want to do anything.
Yeah,
just firmly on this fence.
And then we're flipping coins, because then you have to flip that whole slavery in the Constitution thing and tack on the Missouri Compromise, which
what was that?
He was a part of. That is where Missouri is not allowed to enter as a state unless Maine enters as a state. Basically, it's Missouri.
This was that 1-to-1 thing.
Yeah, Missouri statehood.
You have to have a slave-owning state and a non-slave-owning state.
It was a slave-owning state. They kept voting on it. They're like, we don't want to admit it as a slave-owning state. And then Maine was ready to join in. And then in order for Maine to join in, they're like, well, then you got to let Missouri come in. And basically, it set up the not law, but the precipice, what is it?
The precedent.
That's the word. That anytime you add a slave state, you have to add a free state. Now, there was that whole...
So, I mean, basically, this is... Hey, guys, we know there's going to be a war about this shit someday. We got to make it even.
There was, There was that whole line.
Is that? They're just...
There's that longitudinal line that they drew across. They're like, no slaves above this line. And they're like, except for Missouri, that's fine. That's fine. We'll ignore that.
Right,
but
ignore
going
Missouri,
forward, no more... no more slaves above that line until
Sure.
we get to Bleeding Kansas incident in the 50s.
And then we want more.
And then, we want more slaves, and that's the next state to come in. But if it comes in as a free state, well, then that just throws off the balance again, and here we go. So,
I mean, can't have that. We got to have a fair fight here in however many years.
So we have a president who is essentially just the middle of the road, not wanting to hurt anybody's feelings. So
he's a fence sitter. He's a people pleaser. He's just there to make everybody happy, shake some hands, kiss some babies, hopefully get through his 4 to 8 years of leadership and be forgotten about in the books of history. Because if we remember you, it's might not be for the best things. Although with the way we whitewash our history, we do kind of deify all of our old white men who are awful people.
Except for this one,
which is why we're doing this. To tell you well, we don't talk about them.
We're talking about the negative sides of them. We're not really deifying them here. I think we'll kind of bring them back.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. We're going against that.
I got you.
Yeah, the schools, our education systems does that. Yeah.
Yep. And fun fact, Johnny, last thing, that we're going to talk here about slavery before we move on from this subject. It's going to be the first subject that we talk about for the next few presidents. Fun fact, he supported sending free men of color to anywhere but the United States. So much so, in fact, that he set up the nation of Liberia in Africa, and it's the only country.
It said, all right, if you're here, if you're free, and you're a slave, you were former slave, you're free, you get to go to out of this country.
Yeah,
we don't want you here. Your value is gone here, so you can go to this country in Africa, which I assume he thought, to Liberia, which I assume he thought, it's basically where they came from.
Yeah,
even though many of them probably didn't come from Africa.
These free men of colors that don't speak any of the language of any of the African nations is being put.
You'll fit right
generations. At this point, we're talking about generations removed from Africa, and we're just going to shift right.
If you have a grandparent who is a first citizen, or probably great grandparent at this point, who is a first one in to America and had a native language, you probably don't speak it.
Nope, you probably don't. Nope.
I'm pretty sure my great grandparents came over from Portugal or whatever. I don't speak any other language.
Nope. And of course, that's assuming that you're going to the region where that dialect was even from, anyways, which is about a 0% chance of that.
Africa's not that big of a continent, though, right?
But if you're ever asked in Jeopardy, or if you ever see a Jeopardy question, what is the only country in the world that has a United States president that's named, or the capital named after a United States president, you can say Liberia, because the capital of Liberia is Monrovia, which is named after Monroe for his helping set up the country of Liberia, where we sent our unwanted free slaves.
Oh God!
Free men of color.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, the former slaves who had now been freed. Yeah, they get it.
All right, so now that slavery's out of the way, Johnny, let's talk about how Jimmy Monroe got into office. So, nepotism. He served underneath.
But who?
He was a lot. He was a lieutenant underneath George Washington, and during the Battle of Trenton, Johnny, he has somehow managed to be one of only 5 dudes on the American side that gets wounded during the Battle of Trenton. We don't get anybody killed during the Battle of Trenton, and we only get 5 dudes wounded, and one of them is Jimmy Monroe, who almost dies from being shot. But survives. Now, after that, you can kind of take George Washington off the nepotism end, because George Washington did have him as an advisor to France, and then immediately kicked him out of that position when Jimmy Monroe went, I don't really like all your politics, and I think maybe we should change this one. It's not conducive. And George Washington, being the ever understanding, wanting to surround himself with differing ideas, fired him because George Washington was very much a dictator. So there is.
He wanted to be a monarch.
Monarch.
I don't think it's unfair, though. I don't think it's surprising that he was, because we were coming from a monarch. He had to set up a new system of government. He's like, I don't know what the hell to do. There's one dude in charge over there, so I'll be that guy. Like, I get it.
Well, now after George Washington, he's going to practice law underneath Thomas Jefferson. He's actually going to serve as a minister to France and England underneath Jefferson presidency. There is nepotism number 2, and the biggest nepotism.
Isn't nepotism family related
or friends? It's family or friends. Family or friends.
Is it?
Yeah, it's
okay.
friends. It's It's
okay.
it's high people of power helping out other high people of power.
I mean, that's just what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens at like McDonald's.
Yes.
Like you're gonna get promoted to assistant regional manager because you know the regional manager better.
Yes, that's nepotism. It's not about who's
right,
best for the job. That's what it is. So our
I know we're just we're taking this guy out in the knees for this shit though. Like this seems you're grasping at straws here for something.
I'm saying he got into his. Just bear with me.
He got into his position because of who he knew and the positions that he held prior. That's how do you think promotions work, Tommy?
And a huge chunk of luck, though. Here, hold on. There's a huge chunk of luck. Now, the next guy here, he was absolute besties.
Being successful works.
Yeah, he's the absolute besties with James Madison, serving as his Secretary of State and Secretary of War, kind of simultaneously. Is actually the only person to have ever done this, and that does give him the title, even up to today, as the most qualified man for the position. So, I mean, I'm taking my nepotism and throwing it in the garbage because he actually was, even up to this day, the most qualified.
He literally just worked his way up
as Secretary of State.
And then he was still voted in, right?
Yes.
It wasn't given to him.
No,
he still had a campaign. He just had the support of the government, essentially.
Yeah, he does get the nod for the office, basically for running for the term underneath Democrat Republicans because of everybody he knew, especially Madison. Like, he just served under the previous president. Yeah. Like, it makes sense. Like, this is our guy. Except he is not the orator that any of the founding fathers were, and he's also not as smart as any of the other founding fathers were, or as vicious.
So this is the beginning of our downfall, where we decided that you don't have to be smart to be president.
Yeah, or any of the other founding fathers. Like, he's got like no actual like redeemable qualities to him. He's going to be what's called the last Virginian of the old breed presidency. He's the last one to wear a powdered wig. He's the last one to wear the tricorn hat. He is the last, Virginian plantation slave owner presidency aristocracy that comes from the South, because from this point it's been like Virginian, and so he's the last of these. Not saying this is the last Virginia, but he's the last of that line of
he stops
domination.
that trend.
Yeah, he's going to be the last of it.
Yeah.
All right, he's going to win the presidency against the Rufus King. So if you didn't know who Jimmy Monroe was, you definitely know who the Rufus King was.
Rufus King sounds like a pretty badass like jazz player from the 70s.
Doesn't it? But he's basically going to win only because the Federalist Party is on the verge of collapse. And so he's essentially running unopposed, so much so that at the end of this first term, the Federalist Party is completely collapsed, and he runs unopposed during the second term.
Can you imagine a president running unopposed these days? Like, I mean, I know we get close to it a lot of times, but good Lord.
No, this is like legit
That's
unopposed.
Nuts.
He actually only doesn't win.
They had other part. Was it just two parties then, or
it was just at
parties, right? Or no?
They come and go. So like, there are a lot of elections. Okay. Actually, believe it or not, there are a lot of elections that actually had on the ballot more than two parties. However, at this particular time, just through happenstance, his first election might as well have just been one party.
The way they were all,
and literally the second election he ran unopposed. There was nobody that ran against him. The only reason why he didn't get all the electoral votes is because you had one dude who's like, nope, only George W. gets the unanimous all electoral votes. So he just throws that.
That guy was trying to. He was trying to do the thing that like the college football playoff committee does, where like, we can't have a unanimous decision on number one or whatever. So there's always some dude that puts like, I don't know, Virginia Tech number one instead of Bama or whatever. I don't follow college football. I don't know what I'm talking about, but you know.
I got you. Yep. So now on to the hypocrisy element of his politics, like most politicians are. We've already kind of talked about the slavery end of it. But before being president, he was opposed to Virginia ratifying the Constitution, as he was opposed to a strong federal government. And he liked the Articles of Confederation, which meant stronger state governments. And then immediately when he becomes elected president, he sets about on what is called the Era of Good Feelings, where he goes on a nationwide tour touting about how nationalism is the best way to go and how, don't you worry, Northerners, although I'm from Virginia, I've got your best interest at mind. He's trying to rebuild the hearts and mind of this country after the abysmal War of 1812, which really tore it apart, with a lot of the northern states going, Canada's not so bad, eh? So he's
they're fine. They're nice.
Bring them all back together.
It sounds to me like he just wanted to take a road trip.
He took a road trip.
Tour the U.S. Go do some diners, dives, and drive-ins or whatever the hell. Is that? Just
pretty much.
He's just hang out at the bar, talk to some folks, and say, "Hey, I'm a good guy." Get back in your office and do some work. I don't want to have a beer with my politician. Thank you very much. I want you to get the fuck out of here and do some work in the Oval Office. Get out of my bar. Wait, I'll drink by myself. We don't have anything in common.
I prefer it, actually. Now, this dude exactly, you might be wondering at this point, we've talked a little bit here for, so what did he do as a president? What is his legacy, so to speak? Well, he's got his tour.
We badmouthed him.
We'll badmouth him. We're talking about his good stuff, or what he did.
He obviously created a country in Africa. That's pretty big.
He created a country in Africa, Liberia. That's kind of dope.
I've never created a country.
He went on a tour. And it's like, hey guys, I'm not that bad of a dude, and you should like America because you live in America, so let's be Americans. So hyper-nationalism, kind of blamed that guy for that.
Yeah.
And then
love that, get that going early on.
And then he demilitarizes the Great Lakes region, which after the War of 1812 wasn't so much of hey, this is my great idea, as much as it was kind of a necessity thing, because he kind of redrew up the boundary lines. We're like, hey, we won't attack you anymore, and so we just got rid of. Believe it or not, at one point we had battleships and shit on the Great Lakes, and that's.
I do believe it. They're huge. If you haven't been to the Great Lakes, it's they're great. It's no lie. It's a big lake.
Yeah, and so but we demilitarize it. We get our armies off the border in Canada pretty much, and we take our boats off the water there in the Great Lakes. Which, in all honesty, that's not a bad thing. Trying to foster trade with Canada and better relationships there after they just burned down our White House, but we also burned down their capital. So it's kind of like a tit for tat.
Sure, yeah. No, it's fairsies. Yeah,
fairsies.
It's like if your brother punches you in the mouth and he's like, "Don't tell mom, I'll let you hit me." One of those.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
He does establish the dual colonization of Oregon with England, allowing England and Oregon to be settled by the United States and England. And that only leads to a little bit of a war called the Pig War, which we did an episode on earlier.
All right, well, I like this guy. He was responsible for that ridiculous mess.
So there's a lot of things that he did that at the time were like, oh, that's okay. But then bleeding Kansas. This dude's fault. Oregon, dual colonization, the Pig War. Oh yeah, that's this dude's fault.
It's like the butterfly effect type thing. It's like you let him, and everything seems fine, but he just does a couple little things weird or different or off, and then all of a sudden there's wars happening. 20 years later, 40 years later, or whatever.
And most famously, Johnny, for his administration, pause for the most famously. No, most famously. He does he writes the Monroe Doctrine, Johnny. And by writes the Monroe Doctrine, I actually mean John Quincy Adams does it and is the the driving force behind it. Then Monroe gets credit for it because it comes into effect underneath Monroe's administration. So the Monroe Doctrine. Now, I see the look on your face. What the hell is the Monroe Doctrine? So essentially what the Monroe Doctrine is we've got a white European descendant who now is president of the United States going, Europe should have no business in the affairs of the Americas. So anything that's going on up in Canada or North America or South America or, anywhere at all in the Caribbean, it should be the duty of the Americans, and by that I mean the United States, to interfere and not Europe. And in exchange, Johnny, America / the United States will not interfere with European affairs, which doesn't exactly play out in about 100 years. So, there we are.
It did last a while.
It did last a little bit. Yeah, we definitely did stick out. And to start with this whole get Europe out of the Americas, he does buy Florida from Spain which
now I don't
maybe
like him.
We should have not made that purchase.
Yeah. Now, worst president ever.
So yeah, and it does. It's like the standing guidelines of American, like, in world affairs, is that, like, America threatens to go to war with Europe if they interfere in the affairs of the Americans, which is eventually what pushes us to war with Spain over Cuba, is because we're like, Europe's supposed to be getting out, and they're not getting out. Yeah. And so Monroe Doctrine, like, that was one of the driving forces for us to try to, like, intervene in the Cuban affairs, because they're trying to become...
justifications.
Yeah, it's like if
we're trying to intervene. I mean, it's,
basically, if a country was trying to become independent, let's say Haiti, but not them, because that was the slave revolt. But a country like Haiti that white people are trying to take control of, we will allow them to become independent, just like the United States did, unless it interferes with the United States belief structures, like in the Philippines, or the U.S. Virgin Islands, or Guam,
Puerto Rico.
That one too. Also? Yeah, can't forget about Puerto Rico.
Can't forget about Puerto Rico.
Can't forget about that. And then, of course, the Monroe Doctrine goes right into the dumpster wayside when, the whole World War I thing happens. Although, to be fair, if you want to stretch it, you could argue that was still the Monroe Doctrine in effect, because Germany did try to get Mexico to go to war with us. So,
well, they tried. I mean, you can try lots of.
But then there's also the Mexican-American War, which is also, in and of itself, a conflict of the Monroe Doctrine, because here we are, the United States saying, like, no European should interfere with the Americas, and then here we are, a European-descended nation that's interfering in the independent nation of Mexico. So, what are politics? They're gray lines, right?
Rules for thee, but not for me.
So that's it. It's just Jimmy Monroe. The dude got into office because he knew people.
Good job, Jimmy.
And he got elected because, like, nobody was really running against him, because it just happened to be that time in America's history. He went on a tour. He made a country in Africa for our freedmen of color to go to. He wrote the Monroe Doctrine, but he actually didn't write it. And he bought Florida. So, thanks.
That's it for this week in Historic Hindsight. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and join us next week when we talk about Disney and the county they bought.